God save the Solomon Island from shore to shore. Blessed all our people.
This is a story of how the Happy Isles were wrecked on the rocks of civil war, corruption, and bankruptcy. You won't see the faces of many militiamen or politicians who are responsible. They don't like to answer questions. Ordinary people have little say and are often afraid to speak. Australia is bankrolling the peace process here with a naval ship off the coast at $250,000 a day, observers ashore, and an aid budget of $20 million. But the process, 10 months old now, is bogged down by vested interests.
Dearest Modesta and children, hope you are all well at this time. And I must thank you for your understanding and patience during these hard and trying times.
Ezekiel Alabua is an important man, Premier of Guadalcanal, the largest island in the Solomons. We caught up with him in Sydney, recovering from a machine gun attack on him mounted by two nephews who lead militia forces on the island.
Maybe this is the sign of the time. Biblically, what the Bible says is that the people will be rising up against each other, brother against its brother, and father against son, and all these things. Surely our faith in God has seen us through many hardships. Thank you for your prayers and love. I'm finding Sydney very cold at this time.
Outside the capital, Honiara, stand the remains of the Alabua home, not quite complete when it was destroyed in last year's ethnic violence between islanders. His wife, Modesta, is most heartbroken for her 8 children and the 2 grandchildren she dotes on.
Me, as a mother, me find it very hard for me. And for picking in below me, I could not attend him school. And also, very hard to find money to afford other families below me.
Three Alabua houses were destroyed in the village of Cacambona in the fighting between Guadalcanal people and settlers from nearby Malaita Island. On the surface, it's tranquil now, but the tensions remain. Modesta wants her husband to get out of politics while he's still alive.
So far, I have been government, and him no got him time for come together with him for family. So lo teaching blow me like him husband blow me, for time him come back, me tell him for take him rest.
Tell him to get out of politics and stay with the family.
At the same time, I must get out from politics too.
What is your financial situation now, yours and your wife and your 8 children?
Actually, having 8 children is not an easy task to maintain them, and financially I can simply say that maybe I'm broke.
You are broke?
Yes, I am.
Few would deny the family has suffered, but as we'll find out, Modesta's husband, the Premier of Guadalcanal, now faces mounting questions about his role in events that shook the nation.
So when he says he had nothing to do with the violence...
Do you believe that?
Do you believe that?
I don't believe that. And I have good reasons for not believing that.
He says he's broke.
I don't believe it. If he's broke, then he's put it elsewhere or it's been taken off him.
Until 3 years ago, the Solomons seemed pretty much to be, as it boasted, the Happy Isles. It was the poorest Pacific nation, but its people seemed easygoing, making do with what they had. The unique pipe bands seemed to reflect the adaptability of island culture. Old thongs to tease the music out of traditional bamboo pipes, or their modern variant, water and electrical conduit, often filched from building sites. 1,000 islands make up the Solomons, fewer than 500,000 inhabitants speaking 80 separate languages. A nation, really, only through colonial expedients, as the nation's first Prime Minister and elder statesman admits.
Our nation as such is made up of so much diverse culture and that sort of thing, and the island feeling and the feelings of I come from this particular island and you come from that particular one has been throughout history, and I think basically it's these differences that has caused us to arrive at the kind of ethnic situations that has erupted in recent years.
Tradition still rules the lives of tribal and family groups called Wantoks, literally one talk, people united by their own particular language. Change, economic or social, comes slowly.
It always seems to a visitor that the women seem to be busy working and the men seem to be busy sitting around talking. Is that the truth?
Yeah, that's really true. Women are busy cooking, cleaning up the homes, taking care of the children, even carrying firewood, carrying drinking water, all this. And men, their job is just to clear up the bush and cultivate the land for plant. And very easy job. Women always do very heavy duties in the home.
The recent tide of violence has started to change the traditional norms in ways that confuse and frighten the vast majority of islanders who live in villages.
These young people are very much aggressive than usual, and they tend not to listen too much on these community leaders and elder people. So it makes it hard for these community leaders to control the young people.
So that has undermined the leaders in some ways.
I think so, yes.
And, Nolan Lenny adds, the power of the churches, which wield enormous moral authority, has been suddenly diminished.
The role of churches has been undermined. You know, it's easier for churches to control the people than politicians.
So you would say they failed in their role of leadership of the...
They have failed, miserably failed.
Into this climate of uncertainty come the peace monitors. Local people travelling through villages to persuade them the troubles are over and every weapon should be handed in. Unarmed foreign observers, mainly from Australia and New Zealand, provide logistics and backup. The process began with enthusiasm, but it's now 8 months behind schedule and running out of steam. Elders often say they no longer have the authority to order young men to hand in guns. In this village, the young men are notable for their absence.
It's very hard for them because if they do, then these young men would just shoot them or ask them money because they go against their plans and all this.
Do you think that will change back again, or has this situation changed forever?
Respect and all this will not be so respected like as our lives before.
Does this make you sad?
Yeah.
Homemade guns using ancient ammunition left by the Americans after the Second World War are trickling in. But there are hundreds of high-powered weapons still hidden in villages and jungle. As a result, the process has reached a critical stage, as the leader of the Indigenous Peace Monitoring Council, Sir Peter Kenaloria, admits.
We feel that the original and the former enthusiasm that was once there by certain members of the parties to the agreement are no longer there.
Have you reached a critical stage, do you think?
Yeah, I think we do have that kind of situation now, because a lot of demands or obligations under the agreements have not been achieved, and by that fact alone, it's a critical situation.
Good morning. My name is Nigel. I come from Australia. and I'm here as the team leader for the IPMT. The IPMT members are sitting around you, and we come from Australia, New Zealand and around the Pacific Islands. Our role is
The peace accord is struggling because the Solomons government is weak, factionalised, self-serving and corrupt. Without signs of real determination to reform at the centre, militants will not give up their high-powered guns, nor will villagers feel safe to surrender their only means of defence. And there are worrying reports of a growing trade in high-powered arms from Bougainville.
How much money did he spend on those guns?
14,000, 7,000 each. $7.
And these were for high-powered weapons?
Yeah.
$7,000?
Yeah.
And you paid your money for it?
Yeah.
Did you think that the government would give you back that money?
That's a big question.
But you gave $7,000 for each of those guns?
Yeah. 14,000.
14,000 for two.
And who did you give that money to?
Bougainvilleans.
Yeah, Bougainvilleans.
God save the Solomon Island from shore.
This was once the multi-million-dollar Australian gold mine, Goldridge. It had hardly begun operations before the violence closed it down. Today, it's home to a few squatters scrabbling for gold in the slag. Economically, the islands have shot themselves in the foot. If it wasn't for international aid, $20 million a year from Australia alone, the nation would be broke. Virtually every major industry has closed down, plant and equipment wrecked. Rebuilding in the current climate is impossible.
When law and order is not under control, then no investor will come here. No investor, even those who are already in the country, will not want to do anything unless everybody is confident that the police is on top of law and order.
Which there's little doubt that it is not at the moment.
Anyone, any investor here, and I'm talking about both foreign and local investors, they will have the same answer to it, and that is they don't have any confidence.
As the nation's central banker, Rick Ho is scathing of the politicians and bureaucrats he's witnessed feeding at the trough of the nation's dwindling finances. This year, they've been exposed granting themselves and their friends millions of dollars in customs and tax exemptions.
Those who are receiving these remissions are those that are very close to the government and other individuals and even former combatants, militants, and friends of those who are perhaps in government. It's a corrupt and an evil thing to do in government.
While the nation's leaders line their pockets, Honiara's hospital is so poor relatives have to feed the patients. It can't pay for a full staff of doctors, and there aren't enough drugs to go round.
I think we have to accept that sometimes you can't win. There's not enough resources to adequately manage this hospital. And the most important is the human resources. We don't have enough staffing to look after most of the patients.
Yet the government has showered its cronies with exemptions and fraudulent compensation payments worth about 30 million Australian dollars, amounting to more than the nation's annual health budget and more than Australia gives in annual aid.
You have money going to different places. It does sort of affect us, and we just hope that the government understands the seriousness of the problem. We keep reminding the government through the normal channels.
Money that is desperately needed, I suppose.
Money, yeah, that's right. We desperately need that amount of money.
On one hand, we are giving away millions of dollars, and then on the other hand, we go to the donors and ask them for money. I think this is nonsense.
And it's a squandering of the resources, isn't it? It's a squandering of aid money.
I mean, it's just plain nonsense. I mean, anyone in their right mind shouldn't be doing that.
The men who run the country from the increasingly decrepit streets of Honiara don't want to explain themselves and dodge requests for interviews. They've also been trying to delay elections due at the end of the year, for which Australia has already donated the funds. Under strict orders from the Prime Minister not to discuss policy, the Parliament's only woman, a junior minister, was left to defend the indefensible.
That bill actually is a standby bill. It's a bill to ensure that all the relevant aspects of the electoral law are met, are put in place properly. Everybody who wants to vote are registered properly, that we are not just racing through because we want an election done. As you know, we have just come through rough waters. The environment is still not really to a position that we would like it to be for an election.
I think it's very clear and very obvious to all Solomon Islanders that there is no two-way about it. We have to have general elections this year. This will only be the first step, and it's a very, very important step.
And the lights go out. Rick Ho hardly notices. It's such a regular part of Honiara life today. Australia spends about $90 million a year keeping the flag waving offshore. But the frigate has little enough to do since military intervention has been ruled out. Ashore, Australia is pressing hard for the elections to be held, but many believe Canberra has squandered its influence. By helping to legitimise the government installed by a coup last year, they believe Australia's commitment to democracy and the restoration of law and order has been undermined.
Australia would be quite happy with a minimum form of democracy in the Solomons, so long as it does not threaten wider Melanesian security, which would be a security problem to Australia. And I think there has been part of that influence on how Australia has conducted its foreign policy here.
It was on Guadalcanal that the Americans and their allies changed the tide of the Second World War against the Japanese in the Pacific, and at the same time unwittingly lit the slow fuse that ignited ethnic tension more than half a century later. Unmentioned at the War Memorial are the thousands of Malaitans brought to Guadalcanal to work for the war effort. They proved willing workers, and when the war ended, they stayed and prospered, and local resentment against them grew.
The other people from various parts of Solomon Islands, including Malaysia, come to Guadalcanal for employment purposes. And so, because they are here for employment, they take employment and work seriously. And as such, the rate of success amongst the immigrants, we can call them, people who come from different islands, is understandably higher than people who are here who may be taking things for granted.
I think enough is enough. Takaman dies, Takaman is suffer, the consequence now.
So who fanned the flames of resentment? A rising grassroots movement known as the civil societies believes that, as in South Africa, there can be no reconciliation until the truth comes out.
I am an optimist. You know, I am a Solomon Islander. I want to build this nation, and I feel time will catch up and people will demand that truth be known.
People do not want to come out to say that, I believe this person is involved, I believe this person might be responsible.
So in the end, it may be swept under the carpet.
It may be very difficult to get the truth out, in the end,
But some are prepared to break the island's notorious code of silence, alleging that amongst the leaders who helped arm the militants for civil war was the man we met in Sydney, Guadalcanal Premier Ezekiel Alabua.
We don't know what he was up doing, but he spent most of his time roaming around these roads.
Looking for what?
I think he was chasing up the boys to look for all these old-time war bombs and prepare for the war.
So all this time you believe he was actually helping to arm these Guadalcanal boys.
Exactly.
Do you have evidence of this? Do other people know that this is absolutely true?
Well, there are people who can witness that he was driving up this way, trying to find these all-time bombs and find what we can do.
This is the ammunition dumps left behind by the Americans in World War II.
Nolan Lenny says there has to be a full investigation into Mr. Alabua's actions and into accusations that he, like other politicians, has dipped into a swill of questionable compensation payments.
I think it would be best for him to come out and tell the truth, and if he has done injustice, or anybody else for that matter, they should be put to justice and see that things are done that satisfies everybody.
I simply say that since it happened and the people of Guadalcanal started, I happen to be unfortunate that I'm the premier and it happened during my time. I accept the responsibility.
You accept responsibility. Do you think you did anything which exacerbated the situation?
I have not. That I will bluntly deny. I have not. And I've been trying to recall all my actions and what I've said. I can't remember, having contributed to that.
Did you encourage people to arm themselves?
I never at any stage encouraged people to arm themselves.
I think there are questions of, one, his involvement right from the beginning, going as far as him planning a lot of the violent evictions of Malaytans. Two, the activities that were conducted, it was obvious that there was a level of complicity on the part of the Guadalcanal provincial government and the militants. And three, what benefits did he derive out of it? It is becoming obvious that he did derive benefits.
Whoever was responsible, the nation's future has been jeopardized, especially amongst those who should have most to hope for, the young.
So you mean you hold them guns?
Yeah.
And
Hold them guns. And go fight now. Go fight.
There are not enough schools. There are no jobs. Many former militants are unwilling or unable to return to their villages. The crime rate in Honiara is soaring. The sense of dislocation is absolute. And so is the sense of loss.
Stuck up friends blumi lo gole. And stuck a man misa lot. But this time was minulukim mo atno. Maybe some lot loose them round minulukim some friends blumi lo gole. And end me here on the top dash on the maybe some all that time go blow minus. But me sorry too.
Throughout the islands, the police force has been totally discredited by ethnic divisions and by the fact that many militants have been welcomed into its ranks.
There's a big problem with the police. The first problem I saw is since the recruitment, taking in of people. I mean,
this is of former militants.
Yeah, they just recruit unnecessary, and there are officers in there, they don't really understand what the law is.
So do you think that since the coup, people have started to lose respect for the police?
Yeah, since they themselves didn't stick to their oath. Yeah, they are making oath to serve the nation, but since they break their oath, the democracy of this country is not. I mean, what shall I say? Not working on well.
A very few youth leaders are trying to rebuild from the ashes. These are the youth ambassadors for peace, many of them former militants, now jobless, homeless, and passing their days in a haze of marijuana. Nevertheless, they've convinced AusAid to donate gardening equipment so they can start cleaning up the decrepit capital. In a country where the politicians are doing little enough to progress the cause of peace, some may genuinely start trying to turn their swords into plowshares. But it is beyond Honiara, in villages isolated by the nation's disintegrating infrastructure, that a more solid foundation for peace may be found.
We are one big happy family, God's family, God's family. We are one big happy family, God's family.
The Indigenous and international peace monitors are witnessing a growing sense of unity amongst one section of islanders who've shown more determination than any other group. This is a women's peace meeting. Some have walked for hours through jungle to get here. When the ethnic violence broke out, women acted where tribal chiefs and church leaders failed.
No stop good. Hem finish now. No more fighting now between Malaita and Guadalcanal. Okay, to stop. No more road block. No more bunker. No more holding of gun openly. Although inside Sampal Taxi Lohoniara, inside Sampal Tarake and Hilux and all same, gun yet him stop inside.
During the Troubles, women proved to be a formidable force for peace.
In fact, they have already done a lot to bring about, to get us to where we are today. They have gone through bunkers and roadblocks and boys standing there with guns. And then they cry with them and talk with them. And I think by doing that, it melts the heart of the boys and some positive result.
Hilda Kinney and others like her want island women to flex their newfound power by standing for Parliament. They hope that where men have failed, women can succeed.
We are more powerful than the men because we are the mothers of the boys or the men of the children, and we can use our motherliness to change the heart of these boys or these men. So I think they have more power to change the situation.
There are times that they do not have the right to speak in the Council of Chiefs and all this. They cannot come to express their rights and all this. But from nowadays, when people are looking at it, and we begin to see that the importance that they have important roles, and from now we begin to allow them.
Upon such tentative foundations, hopes have to be built in the Solomons today. Much though most people would like things to go back to the way they were, it'll never be that way again.
It's to be the Happy Isles. But now it's no longer the Happy Isles. I don't know when will it get back to Happy Isles again. Maybe it will or will not.
The longed-for elections may mark a new beginning, but recovery, if it comes, will come in island time. And that is very slow indeed.